Hey guys, so welcome to the Job Seekers podcast. Many thanks to Mark Anthony Dyson for letting us host his podcast. Those were his words, not ours. It's our first official hosting of a podcast. We are going to be talking about job search best practices to explore what has changed in recent years, what trends we're seeing, and which parts of the job search are tried and true and probably aren't going to change at all. But before we jump in, it probably makes sense to take a few minutes to introduce ourselves so that you can know how we wound up in our roles today, helping job seekers, and a bit about the job search support platform that we formed together called Job Search Secret Weapon. So we've got Sarah Johnston, Adrian Tom, and myself, Virginia Franco. So Sarah, why don't you lead off by telling folks a little bit about yourself?
Thanks, Virginia. I am a former corporate recruiter, and I just got tired of seeing great, hardworking job seekers not be able to position themselves well for opportunities. I can remember being on many interviews where it just had an outstanding candidate, but who just blubbered and didn't position themselves well. And so I made it my personal mission to work one-on-one with job seekers to help them stand out in interviews and in the job search track, and founded my own company, Briefcase Coach, before connecting with these two on our new global marketplace.
Awesome. I'll go next.
Yeah, you next.
Then you can go, Virginia.
Okay.
My name is Adrian Tom, and similar to Sarah, many years ago, I saw a gap in the market for people to provide local resume writing services. And so I started my own independent practice called Career Impressions, where I provide resume writing services. And I started out providing to a wide range of individuals. And then over the years, it kind of expanded, and I stopped being just local and started being more national and international. And now I work more exclusively with executive level job seekers, supporting with their resumes and their LinkedIn profiles. And I'm really happy to be partnering with both Sarah and Virginia on Job Search Secret Weapon.
Yeah, no, this has been just such a great experience. So I'm Virginia Franco, and I've said this before, but I'm really old. I have been writing resumes since the day I got out of school a long time ago. I didn't know that anyone ever did that for a living, but my background is I'm a writer. My degree's in journalism, and so I got an opportunity to write for newspapers and magazines and websites, just a little bit of everything. And I learned that how people read all of that stuff is really no different than how they look at all of our career documents. And so when I had a bunch of kids, I needed to figure out some way to sort of take all that learning, and I founded my business, Virginia Franco Resumes. And like these ladies, I write one-on-one for people. It's a super high-touch service. And I'd love to segue into how Job Search Secret Weapon got founded, because I think it's a full story. Mm-hmm. We were at a conference on the spring of 2019?
Yeah.
So, and we were lamenting how there's so many people that, could use support with job search. And between the three of us, we really still were limited in terms of how many people we could help. And so we figure out a way to be able to share our advice with people that, otherwise maybe wouldn't ever work with someone like us one-on-one. So we found a Job Search Secret Weapon as a way to do that. We also recognize that not everyone has, a large budget to work on this. So we wanted to offer really cost affordable DIY tools that people could take and act on really quickly, regardless of where they were in their job search.
Yes, absolutely. I remember being a college student and having the opportunity to apply for a job. Someone mentioned this position that was going to be open, and they said, well, you get your resume in, but you got to get it in by tomorrow. Otherwise the job's going to close. And this was the very first time I was writing a resume and didn't know what to do. And I remember Googling, or at that time, I think it was Ask Jeeves. This is going to date me. Ask how to write a resume. And I was looking at all the templates online, and I was so overwhelmed. And I just wanted somebody to tell me exactly what to do. And that's what Job Search Secret Weapon is. It tells you exactly what to do with the templates and the scripts so that you can plug and play into your job search.
Yeah, it's so funny. I remember my first sort of my second job I was so excited to get into, and I hadn't interviewed. My entry-level interview wasn't that tough, but this was sort of more of a real job, and there was no Google. So I started calling people that I knew and said, what kinds of questions do you ask? I had no idea how to prepare for an interview, and I know lots of people are like us. So we offer support for interviewing, resume templates, and just everything you need for job search.
On demand, which is what people need. Quality on demand. Yes.
That's right. No, absolutely. So we're going to break this into 3 different segments, sort of what's going on now, best practices, what trends we're seeing, and then what our thoughts in terms of what's going on in the future. So let's start with what's happening now. Sarah, what job search, what best practices have you seen that are sort of tried and true when it comes to job search strategy?
I think you hit the nail on the head, tried and true. A lot of people right now, they're in a state where maybe they're panicking because they lost their job or they're feeling insecure in their position. And a lot of people, the very first thing they do is hop on the job boards. But I want to just stress that the key to a successful job search is taking that step backwards and doing that self-evaluation before you launch into a job search and building out your target company list. And what I mean by that is, because a lot of people skip this step and they jump straight into building out their resume. So building out a target company list means asking yourself, if I were to land the job that I want, the dream job that I want, where would I need to live? Who hires people like me for the job that I want to do? And just really evaluating every single possible option that you have, doing all the market research. People typically need to spend around 20 to 40 hours doing this market research to do a good job in setting themselves up for success. And the other thing that I would stress here is, networking 101 is still fairly old school. I mean, we're now on our mobile devices all the time, and we're texting and we're sending LinkedIn messages, or we're on Clubhouse. But at the core, networking is building relationships and leveraging relationships. And so if you could do one thing in your job search, that is focus on people, because people hire people. ATS systems don't hire people, computers don't hire people, but people hire people. So think about all the people that you know in your life or that you have known in your life who could potentially be helpful for you in your job search. Do that mind map exercise where you just dump every name of every person that you've worked with in the past, vendors that you've managed or that you've worked with, former fraternity or sorority sisters, people that you've known from high school. Those are all great individuals who could potentially help your job search, and missing that step in the process could be detrimental, or you could miss out on opportunities because you didn't take those steps. And I'll just kind of add one more final point, and that is, as new as things are today, and as things are more online, I want to encourage people to do something different in their job search. There's a saying that I like to mention a lot, and that is different is better than better. It's a marketing term, and it's something that I want job seekers to consider as they're approaching this search. What can you do differently than your competition? If your competition is all applying for jobs on LinkedIn or all on Monster, what can you do differently? And I would stress building relationships, maybe considering doing that value validation project, or just exceptional cover letters that speak to your passion. Those are just a few ways that you can really stand out.
I love that you shared that. And I think what is, going back to what's tried and true, I don't think I feel like people have always hired based on who do they know. And that's still happening today. It's just that now we have job postings that have to be created and then get published. It's human nature when someone has a job opportunity to say, well, hey guys, who do you know? Or who do I know? And so those conversations were always going on. It's just now that they're going on at the same time that the hiring manager is speaking with HR and getting the job description together and getting it published. So by the time it's posted, there's probably already a really strong pipeline of pre-qualified people, and you want to work to be part of that group. And that has always happened.
It's true. It's important to be more proactive versus reactive, which I think a lot of people are with their search. When they need to do something, they start to do something. But if you're thinking about it as more of a long-term thing, this growth mindset of maybe, how can you look forward in your career and your job search, not just in the moment when you need to, but in that next step, it's, building relationships continuously and investing in that, so that the next time you find yourself, right, yeah, you've already created warm leads and individuals who know you and know what you're capable of doing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't think human nature has changed that much since
Right.
job search evolved. So that plays very well to that, 100%. So Adrienne, let's talk about LinkedIn, because that we know is how it's a tool that people use to be found, but it's also a tool that people use to find others.
Exactly. So to build off of what Sarah said, how can you create relationships? How can you do research? How can you, get on people's radars well before you need to? LinkedIn is a great tool for that. Last I checked, there's over 760 million registered users, but I think only about 300 million people are active monthly users, which means there is a lot of room for improvement. There's a lot of people out there who are not fully utilizing the site for different job search activities, whether it be, information gathering, researching, connecting with people. I think I read another stat that said 6 out of 10 users actively look for industry insights on LinkedIn, which is great. That's what people should be doing, right? Like it's a fairly good amount, but it's not enough still. I think there's missed opportunity here for a lot of individuals to be going on the site, both in the moment as they need to do research for their job search, but again, as that more proactive measure of building and fostering relationships and communications with different individuals to support not just your career in the moment, but your career more long term. And again, that's a mind shift I think a lot of people need to work on right now is, your job search isn't just a one-time thing. It's potentially an over and over and over thing. And it's a muscle that you constantly have to work on and strengthen. And so LinkedIn is an excellent resource. And for me, a lot of people say, well, how do I get active on LinkedIn? How do I use the site? And it's twofold. You want to have both a strong profile that, is very clear about who you are, what you're good at, what you want to be found for, but you also want to be engaged on the site, which means visiting it regularly, connecting with individuals, commenting on posts of interest, and potentially using it as a platform to share and increase your own thought leadership. So there's lots of different ways you can use it. And like I said, I think there's a lot of people who are starting to recognize the value, but there's still a lot of people that do not.
You bring up such a great point, Adrienne, in that before our careers, we used to stay at the same company, or people used to stay at the same company for 15, 20, 30 years. And now the average individual changes jobs every 2 to 4 years. So you constantly got to be leveraging that network that you have.
LinkedIn's a great place to start to build it. Really, it's like your online, what do you call it, Rolodex? That's aging me too.
Well, and to me, it's really the world's greatest database, because you can find you can find out where people went. You could try to locate people that maybe are at the company you were interested in and came from a background like yours. You can find alumni. There's just so many ways that you can slice and dice the information that's on there.
Absolutely.
Virginia, what's the latest in terms of trends with resumes?
So in terms of what's tried and true, what hasn't changed, the good news is that in the 20 plus years I've been writing, the same sections pretty much stay in place. So I always make sure that my resumes have a headline that says, I'm a chef, I'm an astronaut, whatever kinds of roles you're targeting, that's what that headline needs to have. And then there is a section below that, that how I write that paragraph has changed very much. Back at the beginning of Dawn, I used to use an objective statement, and that has now morphed into a very short statement that shows the reader how I am very well suited for whatever that headline is that I listed. And then you still go into your experience, right? You still sort of show, this is where I work, this is the title, and this is when I did it. You still have an education section. I guess the new section that's evolved is the technology skills. When you see a bunch of job postings that reference the need to know certain technology, if you see that in 3 of 5 job postings that you're targeting, you need a technology skills section. And that was something that back when you did not need. How the content that goes in those sections definitely has changed. How people are reading it has changed, but the core bones of it in my mind hasn't. And I can talk through the what's changed part in the next segment.
For sure.
Anything else we want to touch on in terms of tried and true?
I think we did a pretty good job of summarizing some of the big points here. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about trends for this year, for 2021. And then we could talk in the future in the next segment. So I guess let's start with job search. Sarah, what do you see down the pike right now for this year?
See that there are a lot of individuals who are out of necessity or out of desire making career pivots right now. There have been a number of industries that have been impacted, and there are some losses. So people who've been in event planning or in travel, tourism, oil and gas, these individuals are looking at their soft skills, transferable skills, and they're making career pivots. One other change that I'm seeing this year, and I'm so glad that it's happening in 2021, is that people have destigmatized bridge jobs. And this is something that I think we should talk about. Before, in previous recessions, there was this notion of don't take a job that's below your skill set just to have a job. Wait for that right opportunity. And for some executives or some job seekers, it could take 5 months, it could take 18 months to find that next job. And so now there's a trend for bridge jobs, or positions that you take while you're looking for that next job that's more in line with what you see yourself doing long term. So some examples of a bridge job would be, let's say you were working as a sales executive and you lost your position, or you've been made redundant, and you maybe take a step down and you work in a distribution role, or maybe you work at Home Depot as a sales representative there while you're still looking for your SaaS sales job somewhere else. So that's an example bridge job. I think there's some beauty in a bridge role in that it gets you out of the house. It helps you stay fresh, continue to meet people, continue to build your network. I think there's value in every opportunity. And a good resume writer will know how to help you position these bridge positions on your resume so that it doesn't change the messaging. Are you guys seeing people make these moves?
Yeah, absolutely. And just like you said, it's what can you extract from that experience and use to your advantage? It can be a different skill that you learned, or want to spotlight, or a different result that you generated. And it's just about how you take the information and you repackage it and you resell it to support where you kind of want to be next in your career.
I agree. 9 times out of 10, those bridge jobs still require you to use the same skills that you used with your target job. So it's all about how you tell the story around what you did in that role. And to me, it's always been a huge mistake, but I'm so glad people are embracing it. It's a huge mistake to not do something to close the gap, because the gap sets off, unfortunately, alarms. And taking a bridge job is a great way to control that narrative.
Absolutely. And another trend that I'm seeing right now is just people embracing this online culture. So you've got a lot of conferences right now that are happening online. You've got new social media platforms like Hive and Clubhouse, where you can meet people online before you meet them in person, because there's not as many ways that you can meet people in person right now during the pandemic. So I see this being an ever-evolving thing.
It's going to be interesting to see when everyone gets their double shot, and see if people just ditch online altogether because they're sick of it, or if there's a true hybrid.
I personally can't wait to go back.
I mean, I would not be upset if I
think
never
everybody
turned on
wants
Zoom
a
again.
little bit more. A little bit more freedom would be nice in different things. Yes.
Although now that I know you can use Zoom filters to do animals like that guy who did the cat video, maybe that could be more fun. So
you want to stick around for that? Yeah.
Yeah, that might be a highlight.
Cute.
So Adrienne, I talked about LinkedIn last time, but and you talked about resumes and LinkedIn. So let's switch it up. What can you speak to in terms of resume trends for this year?
I think we're seeing lots of different trends kind of holding strong from the last recent years. So I'll just touch on two of them really quickly that I think are important and are going to remain important as we move forward. The first and foremost, it's customization. 10 or so years ago, you didn't necessarily need to refine the information of your resume towards a specific audience, and now it's an absolute must. Employers are getting so many applications, they need to, understand very clearly what value you bring to them, and they need to understand that fast. So that's tailoring the document. The second thing that's holding strong that hasn't really changed, but it's just as important, is writing more results-based information versus task-based information. That means, giving specific examples of success throughout your career that are related to the type of job you're applying for. It's amplifying information in your resume. Instead of just saying something generic like I managed a team, maybe it's directed a team of 15 international sales reps to raise annual sales 45% in 1 year after implementing a new training program. So you can see the differences: general, something anyone can say, versus more robust and measurable, a lot more value in that content. Something that has kind of come out recently because of the pandemic is more emphasis on soft skills within resumes. Employers are looking for that information more so in files than they have in the past. But you don't want to just list these skills in your resume. Something like adaptability is really important right now. A lot of employers are looking for that skill set. You can't just list that in your resume. You have to still tie it to a specific example and give them a reason to believe that you're strong in that area. And the second thing is spotlighting different career wins from throughout the pandemic. So very specifically focusing on what went well for you during the pandemic, how you navigated some tough times this year, how you supported your organization or helped them keep performance steady during this rough period. So not being shy to give very specific spotlighted examples from throughout 2020 and likely within 2021 as well.
No, that's true. I think companies really do want to see that you can support them in good times and in bad. And so showing how you help your employees and your customers to survive during this time. And I think when you tell the story right, people are also willing to forgive the fact that maybe your numbers didn't look as great as they have in years past.
That's true. There's a lot of pressure to come up with numbers, and numbers aren't always the way that you measure results. It could be, how did you adapt? How did you grow? How did you apply critical thinking or keep performance steady? There's different ways that you can still show value, and that's going to look different for different people.
I agree.
So Virginia, what about you? Now that you've asked me about resumes, I get to ask you about LinkedIn. What kind of LinkedIn trends are you seeing?
So LinkedIn has always been a place that we know where hiring managers and recruiters go to search and vet talent. And so how they do this, they type in certain words called keywords, and LinkedIn's algorithm, just like Google and all social media channels, it weighs things more heavily in certain areas so that you pop up on searches. And so how that algorithm looks, I've seen changes in that, or I've studied changes in that from people that do this, make a point of studying it in depth. There's a couple of sections where the algorithm really is weighing keywords perhaps more heavily than it is in other places. That headline at the very top, you have 220 characters to play with now. It's really important to insert the kinds of words that someone is going to use to search for someone like you. So if your job is account manager, but you want to target a role in medical device sales, your headline needs to have the word medical device sales in there, because that's what the hiring manager or recruiter is going to use to have your profile show up on their search. The other place where I've noted that the algorithm weighs the keywords quite heavily is in the job titles. So you actually have 100 characters to play with there, and I encourage people to don't just stop with your job title. Add a little bit of description to that job title that includes some keywords. So going back to that sales example, say account manager, but then you can have in parentheses something like territory sales management of the Southeast. And so that allows you to describe the role a little bit and also hit on some keywords that'll help boost your profile in searches. Especially when people are applying through LinkedIn, and LinkedIn's Easy Apply, making sure that you match in the skills and endorsement section is really important. A lot of the job postings literally list the skills that they're looking for in the postings. Can y'all hear my dog?
Nope.
Okay, good. And so you want to make sure that your skills and endorsements that you list that are in those job postings are in your LinkedIn section as well. And then in terms of, we alluded to this earlier, the whole using LinkedIn for networking and engagement. LinkedIn it wants you to stay on the platform. So things that you can do to show that, which means sending emails to people, responding to communications, like commenting on posts, that all shows engagement, and it's factored into the algorithm. I don't really understand how, but I know it is. And so doing those things will really help you to, again, show up in more searches, because that's what you want when you're trying to appeal to people.
Awesome. I'd agree. I agree with all of that. It's very important to have the right information on your profile page and to use the site fully, right, for what it's there to do. Absolutely.
Yeah, there are a lot of capabilities. The other thing that I've seen, it started last year and it's definitely continuing, is 5 years ago, LinkedIn was just one big long page of all of your stuff. And now everything's truncated and you have to click to keep on reading more. So you better make sure that what they see in those first couple of lines is compelling, or else you'll lose them. So keep that in mind. Don't bury the lead. Don't bury all the good stuff at the bottom. Make sure that the first couple of lines are compelling.
That goes for your post. So any post that you write, you only get to see the first 3 lines of the post. That goes for your about section. You only see the first 3 to 4 lines of an about section. And the headline. The headline, you don't see the complete headline as well. So with everything, you have to give them that hook early on.
Yeah, be strategic for sure.
And with mobile, it's even smaller, right?
I think so. Yeah.
And what did we say? They said 57% of all users use mobile. So you have to think about how people are looking at it. Yeah. The good thing is you can go look your profile up and see what it looks like.
That's true, right? Check it out like someone else would. Absolutely. Smart tip.
Okay, so we've talked about trying to chirp. There's just a giant thunderbolt that hit my tree.
No! Like, that's pretty big. How come I didn't hear the thunder?
Thank goodness for these pods. Okay, so we talked about tried and true. We've talked about 2021 trends. Now let's cast our gaze to the future. If you have a crystal ball, Sarah, what do you see happening?
Ooh, okay. I think that there is going to be a real shift at the top. I think over the next 2 years, people who were hired in senior leadership roles before COVID under a different time are going to be stretched, and there are going to be different demands on these roles in the future and now than there were when these individuals were hired. So I think you're going to see a real shift. A couple quotes that really stood out to me that I pulled and want to read. Ryan Roslansky, who's the CEO of LinkedIn, when the Jeff Bezos announcement happened last week, and it was pretty sudden. A lot of people were really surprised by this. He said, throughout my career, I've watched and learned as Jeff Bezos has tested concepts and grown Amazon into a behemoth. I'm in awe of everything he's created and how he's changed the world. But Jeff Bezos stepping down marks the beginning of what I expect to see as a larger generational shift in leadership. The next generation of CEOs is coming up at a time when business has been turned on its head. It's not coincidental with the macro, COVID, politics, race markets. It's a new world. It's now up to every CEO to manage stakeholders well beyond how we're used to think of the business orbit, which is super interesting.
Whoa.
I don't know if you guys read this or not, but the KPMG business boss from Britain, he actually had this massive situation happen where he was on a call talking to a number of their high-paid consultants who were complaining about just the bonuses payouts that they just got. And he basically told them to stop complaining about their bonuses in the pandemic. And he's being asked to step down for not being sympathetic, which was super interesting. And Paul Millard, who I follow on Twitter, said, this is not about culture war. It's about power of internal networks and organizations. Old school CEOs have been used to traditional power. So I think we're going to see this really big shift at the top. And there's going to be an opportunity for people in their job search to make shifts up. But there's also going to be an opportunity for people who are in these leadership roles to evolve their skills. There's going to be a more intense focus on people management and saying the right things, having great presentations. I mean, it's not necessarily what you say it today that matters, but it's how you say it too. And I think when I look at what happened with KPMG, it's potentially not the content of his message, but it's the tone of his message that really got people upset. So there's this whole expectation that you are held to a very high standard at all times, and there's going to be some pressure there for executives.
I agree. And I think something else that we're going to see is, and we are seeing, are some new additions to the C-suite. So new roles that are created at the top, like Chief Sustainability Officer, Chief Remote Officer. These are different types of roles that have kind of been born from the need. And there's some overlap with what currently exists, but it's going to be challenging at times for people within these positions to make that transition, and or they need to bring in someone who is more specialized in those unique areas.
Absolutely. And I was reading too that job embeddedness of people who were hired during COVID is at an all-time low. And so we've got all these individuals who are hired because we've done video interviews and we've got these remote teams, but they're not feeling connected to the organization. They're not known entities. And that's part of being happy in your work environment, is being known and being trusted. And there's not that right now during this time period. So I think that's going to be a real opportunity or challenge in the future.
Well, and to speak to the C-suite and the evolution of that, there's been a super important push to bring more diversity into the C-suites, women, people of color. And I think that's going to, if the companies walk the walk and really start to do that, we're going to see a difference in the tone and the focus on what's important. So I look forward to seeing what happens.
It has to stem from the top, right? If an organization really wants to make change, then a lot of the time that needs to come from the top down.
That's right. No, and it changes the culture.
Yes.
I saw that Bezos stuff trended on LinkedIn. I need to go back and look at all the comments now.
Yeah.
Adrienne, what are your thoughts in terms of what you anticipate down the road on the resume front, or on upskilling any of it?
Right. So I think if I was to think about, where we're kind of headed and where I see there being a need to focus on, it's circling back to something I said earlier, which is kind of developing a growth mindset. I think a lot of people this year came to realize that job security is not a guarantee, and our careers are something that we need to continuously work on and invest in. I was attending Canadian career conference called Connexus this month, and a lot of speakers were talking about the future of work and the need to be continuously investing in ourselves in order to be more adaptable and able to pivot with greater ease as we move forward. And one of the stats that came up quite a bit was, the one according to the World Economic Forum is, 54% of all employees will need to reskill or upskill by 2022. And that's only a year away. So from that, what's important is job seekers need to, well, not job seekers, anyone really needs to understand that now is the time to start investing and preparing, if you haven't already done so, in order to keep up. Because there is going to be a flood of individuals that are going to continuously invest and upskill and reskill in order to be more adaptable as these changes happen. And you don't want to be left behind because you're going to be playing catch up.
Yeah, no, and companies, we've seen the budgets for training, learning, and development aren't on upskilling, they're on other kinds of training.
Well, the good thing is for individuals who are looking to invest in themselves is you don't always have to spend a lot of money to do it. There's a lot of free or inexpensive resources out there.
Right.
LinkedIn Learning comes to mind. There's both free and paid courses on the site that can help you with different skills, abilities. And I know there's a lot of other resources out there. And now that so many things are virtual, you have more access to information than you've ever had before. So if your employer won't support you, I'd say, see how you can support yourself and what kind of things you can access on your own.
Yeah, no, it's a really wise investment in your future.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I agree. The trend that I was thinking about, it's a little bit more tactical, I guess. I've been thinking a lot about the role of social media in job search. It's definitely social media has become much more powerful in our lives, and job search is no exception to that. I don't see that changing. And so I think that as job seekers, whether we like it or not, it's here to stay, and it would behoove us to use it to our advantage. So as even LinkedIn aside, use your profiles to show social proof that you are who you say you are and you can do what you say you can do. That doesn't mean that your Instagram account needs to be all about work, but make sure that whatever's on there reflects positively on the brand that you want to project. The other thing I would say with all social media, but definitely with LinkedIn, you don't need to know the ins and outs of the algorithm, but know that when these companies roll out new features and new ways of doing things, they're gonna promote. If you're using the tools that they are promoting, they're gonna push it. So if video rolls out, use video. If a story comes out, use a story, because they want to embrace that. They want to show that others are doing it, and it's going to give you more visibility than you would otherwise. So take what you've been given and use it to maximize your stature, your brand, your job search ultimately.
It's a super smart tip. Yeah, most people are on social media in some way, shape, or form right now, and controlling your image and controlling your message is important as you move forward.
And it starts young.
That's true. That's true.
I told you, when my daughter was applying to schools, they were following her. The colleges were following her. I had to go and yell and say, make sure everything is clean. But it starts very, very young. I don't think that that's going to change. We know that they're vetting. They're vetting us on these platforms.
And employers are constantly looking at candidates online. So think about, what are they going to find? What do you want them to see? What do you want them to know about you? Yeah.
And an absence of a social media presence, I think, raises red flags as well. So you need something.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're using it to spy on your happiness at work. I think that's going to be an increase in, as you look at the new Microsoft Viva rollout. I don't know exactly what is in this rollout, but from what I can read about it, it seems like there may be some job embeddedness indicators that they're providing to employers, as well as other tools that use listening AI to kind of give employers an insights into their employees' happiness at work and their employees' connectiveness at work. And so those are all things that we're going to have to really be considering.
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, we all saw that when LinkedIn purchased Microsoft, that they definitely incorporated a lot of that functionality. So it is important to keep an eye on who's buying who and how that might
how
make
it works.
things look,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel like we've covered it. Is there anything that comes to mind that we haven't talked about?
No, I think we did a good job of just giving some quick touch points for individuals to take away for consideration, both now and in their future. It's so important to not just be thinking again in the moment, but to put on your proactive hat and think about ways that you can start making small improvements now to support yourself and your career as you move forward.
Well, thank you.
As much about your job search as you. You have to own your career and your own career development. No one else will do that for you.
That's right. No, you're the CEO. Well, Mark asked me to make sure that we close out by telling people how they can find us. Our company is called Job Search Secret Weapon, and it's jobsearchsecretweapon.com, and it's pretty much that on all of our socials, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So it's fairly easy to find. Mark, thank you so much for letting us hijack your Voice of Job Speakers podcast. Sarah, do you want to say something?
No, I'm just grateful. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Mark. We appreciate it. And thank you, Virginia, for taking the lead on this.